listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined with my friend Amanda of Purple Sage Photography. She uses specialized equipment to capture your electromagnetic energy and translates it into colors. This can give you insight into how other people may feel your presence and how you yourself relate to life. The simple explanation of what she does is she translates your aura into living color. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming out.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
So excited for this episode.
Absolutely.
So, can you give us a little background on yourself and what inspired you to start studying auras?
I'm not good at condensing, so I guess here's a little bit of like the long story.
That's great.
All right. So I would definitely describe myself as an accidental aura photographer. The seed was planted several years ago when I attended my first metaphysical fair and encountered my first aura photographer. I was so intrigued, but I was not the only one, and due to the long waiting list, I was unable to get an aura photograph that day. But that encounter left a huge imprint on me, and I really connected to my spiritual side or self. It rippled through me and through a series of conversations in 2021 with my husband about trying to create a more meaningful and intentional life. An aura photographer was born. I was already exploring nature and portrait photography as a source of income, so aura photography seemed like a natural fit, even though the process and equipment needed is very different. But it fit because it's still a snapshot of one moment in time. I also desperately needed something that does not feel like a job. I needed something that would nourish me spiritually. Before this, I worked in restaurants and retail for over 20 years. In 2020, I reached my breaking point mentally and literally physically. I was experiencing some health issues from endometriosis and a sleep disorder, which will always be something I have to learn how to manage. But I decided that I am no longer going to work for an entity that literally was sucking my life force and leaving me completely exhausted. So my family was only getting a fragment or a shell of myself because I had nothing left to give. I also want to mention Molly May, who was on your last episode, and agree with her that I will never ever consider myself an expert. I am constantly learning and evolving, and I will always do my best to continually be expanding my knowledge. I am super conscious that others are seeking me out because they need answers about themselves or knowledge that they cannot attain anywhere else. I hold that really sacred, and I am super sensitive to the fact for some it takes a lot of courage to get out of their comfort zone and trust me with their time and literally looking at their raw energy. I also want to mention another guest, Kelly Hansel. I believe she was your one before Molly May. Listening to her episode, it just really resonated with me, especially when she was talking about like her reclamation. This journey for me is very much my reclamation process. I'm so grateful. I have to pinch myself sometimes. I love being out in the wild and taking people's auras and just interacting with everyone. It just forces me to be more conscious of myself and my aura and how it relates to everything. Right. So that's, I guess, the long version.
That's great. Yeah, I can only imagine how fulfilling it is to have a job like this where you get to interact with people and just help them see themselves in a different light, you know, than maybe that they've ever looked at themselves personally, you know. It's
absolutely it is. It helps me fill my cup for sure to interact with everybody along their own journey and see where they're at and how they relate to everything.
Right. And auras do kind of bump into each other. So every time you're looking and studying this person and in their energy field, I'm sure it's in some way, you know.
It's super validating, I guess is what I would say in a lot of aspects, because it just brings me back to my own experiences and how like I've interacted with my family or other people, my coworkers. So it solidifies that and just, I guess, gives a reason or purpose to it.
Could you explain for us what the aura is exactly?
So the aura is an electromagnetic energy field that surrounds everything. On an energetic level, auras are said to correspond with our chakras and our overall state of consciousness. It has also been described as a container for all of your energy. So our auras and chakras are connected. They share information by passing the energy back and forth between them, but the aura also connects us to our environment and other energies around us. So I guess the first form of aura photography that most people are familiar with is the Kirlian photography. It really became popular in the 1970s, but it was actually developed in 1939. So Kirlian photography refers to a form of contact print photography theoretically associated with high voltage. It is named after Semyon Kirlian, who is in 1939 accidentally discovered that if an object on a photographic plate is subjected to a strong electric field, an image is created on that plate. Along with his wife, they developed what morphed into what we know today as aura photography. It was shared with the world in the late 1950s and really became popular in the 1970s. So my equipment that I use morphed even more out of that. I use equipment produced by a company called Interactive. Through the use of a hand plate that measures your electromagnetic energy, it translates that energy into frequencies through computer software, and each color has its own frequency. So that is what's shown to me when I take your aura photo.
Interesting. So not everybody does it that way. There's different ways to get that aura photographed.
Absolutely. There's at least three ways that I'm familiar with. The first one is the Kirlian, which is still being used.
Okay.
And I actually would love to get my aura photoed with that. If I'm ever around somebody using that technology, I will absolutely jump on it, even though I have access to it every day. But there's also another technique that's similar to taking a Polaroid picture. And from what I believe, though, those the products are super limited, so they're not being made anymore, so there's not a lot around. And then most of what it's shifting to nowadays, though, is all through computer software.
That's super cool that we can have a software that translates that.
Absolutely. It's incredible that how things morph and adapt through what people want and need.
Right. Are there people that like take photos that have already been taken, like sending in your photos and then they read it, or does it have to be in person?
Definitely needs to be in person. Of course, like there are people who can see auras, so they can do that virtually. It's always, you get the best result in person. But as far as me, I have to do everything using some kind of
the tech.
Yeah, the tech for sure. So it definitely has to be in person.
Right. Okay. What is the anatomy of the aura composed of?
So there are 7 layers to the typical aura. What I usually interact with, though, are just 2 of them. But the 7 layers are, and starting at the closest to your body, the first one is the etheric layer. It's connected to your root chakra and your physical bodies and your organs and your bones and your tissues, etc. Then it moves on to the emotional layer, which is what I tend to interact with or try to capture. And that's connected to the solar plexus. And literally it's just everything emotional that we go through. The third one is your mental layer. That's connected to your sacral chakra, and it's connected to all of our thoughts and cognitive processes. So that's also part of what the photograph tries to capture as well, too. The fifth one is the etheric template. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's connected to your throat chakra. It's also the blueprint for the body and in the physical plane. So it's literally how we exist in human form. Number 6 is the celestial, or the third eye chakra, is what it's connected to. This layer, when healthy, can extend 2 to 3 feet away from the body or even further, and it's how we feel connected to the universal collective energy. My favorite, though, is the Catharic Temple. I don't know if I pronounced that correct, um, but it's connected to your crown chakra. It's the highest vibrating of all the layers, and this is the layer that contains all the information related to your soul's journey through every lifetime. It's kind of like your unique fingerprint that follows you through your energetic and human forms. So I think that is just so cool.
Yeah, for
It's,
sure.
yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of, I guess, the aura work I have done, like having experiences as far as playing with aura stuff is through Kundalini yoga. And we would have certain breathing exercises, and we would like trace our aura with our thumbs, like doing breath of fire. But in Kundalini yoga, they talk about like the 10 bodies, and you just listed like 7 of them. But I think they go even beyond like the typical. So it goes like, I can't think of the names
I am
because
not
there's
familiar
so
with
many.
that. That
But
sounds intriguing.
everything that you said was actually, it's talked about in Kundalini yoga. So it's cool because I don't know, I guess it lines up so well with all the stuff that we know about the aura. So, and
Absolutely.
it's just a part of this spiritual practice, like that you can just create it and bring energy in with these certain techniques. So I'm like, I wonder what I look like after a Kundalini yoga class, like compared to what I look like at the beginning.
I would love to do a session like that. It's definitely on our to do list to try to arrange a session where you do a before and after,
Okay.
because that would definitely be interesting. It would have to be a transformation for sure.
Right, it would be so cool to document it, especially for like the
Yes.
scientific minds, because it would be hard to deny that you could literally see the shift in color.
Absolutely. And I just know from just playing around with my friends up to this point, like we have definitely done the difference between wearing gemstones versus not wearing gemstones. And then doing with Molly May, we did music therapy one
Oh,
time. So that was pretty nifty to see her aura, literally like almost like a fluid motion. The colors just became like brighter and crisper, and we're almost like dancing to the beat of the music in real time. So it was really a neat experience.
I
So
bet.
yeah, I honestly I've never done Kundalini yoga. I've never ventured outside my comfort zone to do yoga in front of people out in the
Uh-huh.
wild yet. I just do it from YouTube videos, but
Right. Well, you
I
can
have to.
find them on YouTube these days. I feel like they're out there.
Uh,
So, and if you ever want to go, we could try to set something up.
that
And
would be amazing.
yeah, it's
I
always a
totally
really
would.
small group when I go and it's outside. And for whatever reason,
Oh,
that makes me
cool.
feel more comfortable because I can like hear birds and I'm like really grounded and I sort of just forget about everybody else. And a lot of times people's eyes are closed when we do like wave our arms around
Okay.
and stuff. I don't know. For some reason, it's easier to drop the ego and just actually play with these energies. So,
That definitely does sound amazing because I have anxiety about being in front of a big mirror in front of a
yeah.
lot of people.
Yes,
Yeah.
indoor
Yeah.
versus outdoor classes are totally different for me. So,
That's awesome. I'll have to look into that for sure.
yeah. Um, could you give us some examples of the different color meanings?
So I guess just quickly I'll go into like the positive attributes of the colors right now.
Okay.
Um, but so violet, it's considered to be wise and spiritual natured. It's inspirational, ambitious, and it's the most magical of all the colors.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're usually can connect to the universal energy a lot easier, or always connected, depending on who they are. And then you go down to indigo. Indigo and blue kind of overlap each other, but indigo feels things deeply. They're very intuitive, artistic, charitable, and aware of people's needs. And then blue will overlap on that, but they're tranquil, peaceful, nurturing, loyal, and helpful, natural teachers and leaders. Then turquoise, which I would love to see one out in the wild, but they're not as common. Teachers, they're very knowledgeable. It's kind of, people refer to this one as like the TED Talk vibe. Like they're just
Okay.
born to be leaders and super confident. They're comfortable in leadership roles. They're natural healers. Um, Yellow is joyful, optimistic, playful, sunny, creative, entertainers. My husband's always got some yellow in his aura. He was a musician for years. So it's definitely a very extroverted, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Extroverted type of personality, typically, if you see a lot of yellow or depending on the placement. Green is social, communicative, needs content. The darker greens are natural healers, but green is also like they're really generous and trustworthy. The greens in my life do tend to be like my rock. So a lot of people turn to them for that nurturing vibe that they give. Um, I've met a lot more guys that are green, but green overall is really like Mother Earth energy. It's very connected to nature as well, though, too. Orange is courageous, intelligent, scientific, detailed oriented, productive. It's also really adventurous. I would love to have some orange in my aura. I typically hang out in the blue areas, sometimes the green. Um, then we come to the red energies. They say, I guess, dominant is associated with red, but dominance doesn't have to be bad, which is a lot of people have been taught to experience red as danger or stop. But red is actually a really good color to have in your aura because it's really grounded. It's
Right.
really confident. It's passionate. They say if you see red and it's a balanced red, like that is definitely the time to just get stuff done. Just go with it and just power through and get whatever you need done. Just do it.
Right. It's like productive.
Yes, absolutely. So it's not bad. Now, red is like the one though that if it is out of balance, it can be, I guess, I wouldn't say the most dangerous, but it's definitely the one that is most obvious to others when it's out of balance who are around you. But red overall is just an awesome color
Yeah.
to have. And then we've got magenta, which they're creative, intelligent, free spirited, unique, and innovative. They're like the most independent of all the colors. And then pink would be the next most commonly seen color, even though I haven't encountered one yet. But pink is just all about grace and gentleness and peacemaker. You would feel right at home in their home. They would just be like, just compassionate and playful and sweet and down to earth. Um, and pink can also really indicate like health as well too.
Okay.
So those are the main colors that you would see in somebody's auras, and those are the good attributes of them.
Okay.
So did you have any questions about any of them? Or?
I guess we could talk a little bit about how you read my aura and like the colors that came out.
Okay.
So, which is not always a positive attributes, but you're welcome to talk about the whole thing because I think it's important for people to
Awesome.
get kind of a real world example of what
Def-
it's like.
Definitely. So yeah, your aura was definitely comprised mostly of orange energy, and unfortunately, there's some, I guess, self-expression and just sheer exhaustion
Yes.
pops up into your aura.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean that you're a horrible person. It just means that we're human and we're just having a life experience right now. So I did notice though that your aura. There's a gap between where your aura starts and your human body, so that to me feels like you're kind of pulling it in today, like you might just be trying to really power through because your energy is depleted.
Right. I did not get good sleep last night, just so you guys know that this is, and I have had way too much coffee. which we talked about.
Yes, caffeine 100% affects your aura, unfortunately. Just like it can literally make you feel jittery, it makes your aura feel jittery and kind of just out of focus as well, too. Literally, like, I mean, anything we do to our internal bodies, our aura reflects that because it's just an extension of our emotional and mental state. So it definitely makes sense that like we see like anxiety and anything like that is going to show up in your aura.
Right.
For sure.
And something like coffee can definitely induce anxiety for me.
Yes.
So it's like when you run on no sleep and instead of resting, you're like, I'm going to just hit the caffeine instead of rest. And then that's what we're seeing today.
But unfortunately, though, just because you are so tired, because you are a mom of little ones, it just comes with being in the human experience. Like that, without the coffee, the exhaustion would you would still be fighting it no matter what.
Right.
So it's just kind of like you just got to kind of do what you have to do to survive sometimes.
Right. And I should probably be doing some aura exercises.
Totally.
To bring in like the pretty colors.
It's so hard though when you're living in the moment to be super conscientious of all that. But orange energy overall though, like we discussed earlier, it's super good color to have. It's really creative and compassionate. You enjoy challenges. I mean, you took on this podcast.
Right.
So it's really cool. It's confident, it's courageous, it is adventurous. It's self-sufficient and very independent. Orange energies, they tend to be like the risk takers or like they're explorers, in history, and current, though too. But so there's the good parts of it.
Yeah, a lot of those descriptors remind me a lot of Capricorn, which I have a stellium in.
Okay.
So it would be interesting to see like people's astrology charts corresponding with their auras, because there is going to be certain energies, like a stellium, for example, is like that's going to be a big part of how you're projecting and like how you give and receive energy. So that would be an interesting study to do, is like look at their chart and take a snapshot and be like, okay.
Absolutely. And I don't know a lot about, I guess, the astrology side to compare and contrast, but I do know just from my experience with my family members, there is definitely some overlap there. So it's pretty incredible how everything connects and flows and I guess just validates other information.
Right.
Or supports it as well.
Right. And I was interested because like you were saying, when you first had your aura thing done, something happened and you didn't get to do it that day. Well, I had someone just look at my aura, but her computer messed up, so she couldn't take the picture and really analyze it. But it was very orange that day too. And it's interesting because I had a lot of energy that day, but I do get like really bad anxiety in crowds. And so I remember being like excited to get it done, but also like, having a little panic attack maybe. So I feel like it showed up. But like ever since then, that orange color, I've had it in the back of my mind. I don't know if it's always orange. Obviously, it probably shifts some. But when I started doing my human design and looked into the generator aspect, which is like all about the sacral chakra. So that's, we're creating from there, we're receiving energy from there. Like that's the bulk. So it'd be interesting to see also, I know that you're not, gonna be able to do all the correspondences, but it would be interesting to see everyone's stuff laid out. Like if you're, interacting mostly from the solar plexus, does your aura have a lot of yellow,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I wish I knew more about chakras, but our auras are definitely very connected to them for sure. Definitely.
Right. Because like I struggle with my root chakra, and even when I was younger, just not feeling grounded and like there wasn't stability. And I remember that when I was younger, the color red gave me anxiety. And I know that's crazy. In
Nice.
my paintings, I have to force myself to put red in because I think of like, I guess like blood and trauma, but I also feel like it's because I had a block there. And so when I think of red, I'm like, oh, like my bloodline, right, is not, it just wasn't flowing for me, you know? So I actually had a weird relationship to the color red. And I hadn't even learned about chakras and stuff at that point. But when I was taking art class, like my teacher would be like, "You need to add some red to this," and I would feel like I don't want to make red paint. It looks
But
like blood just laying there. Like I don't know, but it's interesting to think about the colors we naturally like gravitate towards, and then the ones that kind of repulse us.
absolutely, I definitely agree with that. And I can resonate with that to some extent too. And that's why I kind of gave that disclaimer with the red color,
Right?
is because that's the one when I'm out in the wild doing aura photography that like people are like, oh God, I got red in my aura. And it's like, it's not bad.
Right.
It's
I
like,
feel like it would
yeah.
be good for me to have a little red in my aura. Like
Yes,
I would have felt like, okay, I did my grounding work today, right?
absolutely. But I can definitely understand like what you were just talking about. And it does make sense. And I don't know if it's all part of like our childhood conditioning because red is used as like a danger color
Right.
a
Like
lot.
stop, you know,
Yeah.
hazard.
Yeah. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but you definitely are not alone
Right.
in
That's
that.
good.
Yeah.
Because it does seem silly to have like a bias or like some weird thing associated with colors, but it's definitely there with other
Mine is
senses too.
yellow, so I don't
That's
know. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely have struggled really hard with self-esteem stuff throughout my life. I'm getting better, so I feel like that center is opening a little bit more. I feel like there's a little bit of yellow in my aura. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that's just
There,
like the
there's a
background color.
hint of it, but yeah, unfortunately, since we weren't up against like a
A
solid
white.
background,
Okay.
but there's a hint of yellow in your aura, but not a
It's not
lot
like the
for sure.
main.
Yeah, you're definitely orange, which like when you're not in like your mom moments or completely exhausted from that,
Right.
which being a mom, like I don't mean to say that being a mom is depleting you, but when you're not
It is.
exhausted from having the sleep schedule with a 2-year-old,
Right.
orange is amazing energy. It's just really because I mean you're typically like really independent and courageous and adventurous, and I
I
mean
don't really
those are
see
all good
myself
things.
as being courageous. I feel like other people see me that way. And sometimes I have a hard time. And maybe if I like pull it back and look at myself, you know, as just, I don't know, a character or something, I'm like, okay, she's being courageous. This is wild. But like when I'm doing it, like because I have such bad anxiety, I don't feel courageous, but I do like push through that a lot.
And
And
that in its way though, the fact that you push through it, that is courage right there.
right, right,
So it's just kind of feeding itself for
right.
sure.
That's cool. I love this. It's really interesting
It's
stuff.
definitely a lot of fun, that's for sure.
So, could you explain how the placements of the colors indicate specific things?
Absolutely, yeah. So the placement definitely has everything to do with what the color means specifically for you and how you relate or how people feel you. Um, so I'm very dyslexic, so I always have to make sure I'm looking at the photo of their computer screen when I describe the colors. So it's
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of in reverse for the person. It's like you're looking into a mirror. So
Okay.
I'm describing it as the right side of the photo, but technically it's your left side. And I just have to forget all that when I'm describing it because my dyslexic brain can really take that and really run with it and mess that up for people. So whenever I describe any of the color placements, it's like I'm looking at the photo or the computer screen. But as an individual hearing that information, it's going to be the opposite. Just like I said, looking into a mirror for yourself. So the energy on the right side of the photo that's coming at you um, is the quality of the energy that the universe is sending you or what you're most receptive to. It can also be like what you're trying to call in as well too. It's considered the feminine energy too. Um, it could also be though if you see like a color that somebody else in your life that you're around a lot is dominant in, it could also just be their color kind of like bleeding over into your aura because you're together a lot. Or, like a lot of people are attracted to the same people in the same vibrational plane or frequencies. So it could literally just be you're just both feeding that energy. So the right side of your aura photo is pretty much how I describe the energy coming at you and what you're receptive to. Above your head is your mental activity in the present moment. It's also your hopes and goals. It's pretty much just everything that you're mulling over in your head that day. Um, and then on the left side of the photo, it's how other people feel and experience you. It's your energetic first impression. It's the masculine side of your body. And it's also the recent past. So a lot of times, like when people are trying to call in an energy and they're really focusing on that and doing the changes and the work to call in a certain frequency, they'll see it on the right side of the body first. And then if they really start to work with that energy, then it'll shift over to the left side. And I've had a couple friends that I've read for in the past like come to me and be like, so I really meditated and focused and did the work and went back to therapy or, whatever I needed to do. And so the energy that I was calling in is now on my left side.
Okay.
So it's like present or past energy now as well
Interesting.
too. So it's really cool. So your auras definitely can change. They are fluid. But overall, like your hopes and your goals, especially for me, that one does tend to stay the same. So that's your center, that's above your head. But pretty much any other color or all of them really are very much interchangeable.
So it's just like what you're focused on can shift that. So when I'm like studying astrology and like meditating and doing like my spiritual work, I would be calling in some of the higher centers. The present moment might have some different colors in, right? Because I would be doing it like right then. Or
Absolutely.
like if I was preparing for something like 2 weeks from now, like maybe it would be on the other side, right? Because it would be so,
It
like an expectation or.
Yes, it definitely could be. Yeah, so if you were preparing for like a future event, like you said, like a couple months or several months away, it definitely could come in on the right side of the photo instead of more of the present. But the fact that you're in that mental headspace at that moment, though, too, it could also reflect.
Right, bring it in a little bit
Yeah,
because it's
yeah, there as well.
calling it in. Okay, that's
Definitely.
interesting. My acupuncturist one time, because I would have these weird sounds in my ears, and it wasn't like tinnitus. I don't know. I was literally like hearing frequencies, but I would tell her about it. I'd be like, well, this time it was in my left ear. And then sometimes it would be the other side. But she said that the left ear is something from the past was trying to get my attention. And when I would have it in the right ear, she was saying that the future, there was something like just like the aura, like coming towards me to be
Interesting.
prepared for or to sort of keep my eyes open more. So it's really cool how that what you said like, kind of corresponds even with what she was saying,
That is incredible.
which is the
I've
body. Like,
never heard or experienced anything like that, but it absolutely makes sense.
yeah,
That is incredible.
right. There's so much going on subtly, all the time. It's really cool to be able to like to take a photo of Thor is so awesome for that. I don't like see auras like colors, but I feel people's auras so where I could actually relate it to a color, because I can take it in and say, okay, that person makes me feel warm and at home and loving. So that's going to be a heart center. It's like,
Absolutely.
it is like kind of intuitive for me, but I don't just see like, oh, green's blasting out of that person, where some people might legit see it that way.
Absolutely. There are definitely people that can see a whole array, like they'll see subtle colors, or then there's people that can see like the vibrant, more in tune with it. But I'm with you. I just naturally I feel them.
Right.
So it's really neat to have it validated
Yes,
for
yes.
sure.
I read this book one time and it was trying to help you see them. And I did have a couple moments when it had to be like perfect, like the lighting and if the person was against a white background. So that was really important, but to just like focus your eyes, like to where you go from like you're really looking to kind of like this blurred vision. And when you're out of focus, that was when I could see just a hint of a color.
That is really cool.
But I feel like I look cross-eyed when I'm doing it, so I don't just like try to do it out in public. And it's hard when there's like a lot of colors going on that might
Yes.
interact with it. So I don't know. I definitely don't use that as my main way of reading it, but I have been able to see it if I do the work. But
That's almost verbatim my experience too. Like it takes a lot of focus. I've seen it a couple times in meditation. But otherwise, like yeah, somebody had to be standing against a white background. And you really had to concentrate, and
right.
it took a lot of energy, but it was still really fascinating to be
Right.
able to do it. But that
Yeah,
would
it's a
be
fun exercise.
yes,
Just to
yes.
validate that, like, we actually do have all these abilities within us, but the technology is just a very helpful tool.
Absolutely. And we came into this world with those abilities though too. I mean most kids they say can see auras or at least sense them better than adults can. And it's literally for most of us been conditioned out of us. I was reading something yesterday like how like when kids they'll draw like a pink cat or like a green
Right.
dog or like the person will be purple and like now they're starting to correlate that with like well they saw the person's aura and here we
Right.
are trying to tell them like well a person's supposed to be brown or white or yellow or
Right.
and a cat's supposed to be like white or this like normal color for a cat and like they're drawing it as like what we believe now is possibly what they see as their aura. So they saw the cat as a pink aura, which would make sense because cats would be considered graceful and like
Right.
gentle creatures. So that would totally make sense to a kid to associate that color with them. Same with like a dog, like they would be considered nurturing. It is a color I've seen for an animal before, and a purple human that would maybe like why they could see a purple human more,
Right.
or associate their aura more directly and draw a purple human is because purple would be like the most mystical of all the auras. And it would probably be the easier one for a child to see and relate to,
Right.
as far as like human goes.
I do really like psychedelic portraits of people, and
Oh,
I
cool.
never thought about where the colors were coming from, but like
Interesting.
maybe, just maybe, I'm picking it up intuitively. So like I did a George Harrison painting
Oh,
and he
super
is
cool.
totally blue, like Krishna skin blue. That's just how I was like, that's the color. He's blue. And then the background was like bright green. But I remember my art teacher being like, why do you always have to put colors on them? And like I did Jung, and he had lots of purple and
Oh,
green,
really cool.
but I didn't do like, I don't know. I never try to make people look exactly, realistic. I always try to add this hint of color. I always just kind of assumed it's because I was so into Lisa Frank as a kid. And I'm like, maybe I'm just channeling that. But I usually pick a dominant color for each person.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
And
Like,
what songs does George Harrison, what is
he's
he most associated with?
very spiritual,
Okay, I was thinking he was the Beatle that I was thinking of as the spiritual one, but I wasn't
right?
sure.
And very into,
So that would make sense if you were picking up on his aura with the
right.
blue.
I know,
They're
I
one of
know.
them. They're also spiritual, and just deeply intuitive people.
Right.
But they're also what little bit I know about the Beatles is their boundary. What's the right word? They're truth seekers, they're
Mm-hmm.
justice fighters, they test social norms.
Right.
So that would absolutely,
Right.
like
And when
blue
I
would be.
did John Lennon, I actually did more of a red and yellow color scheme, which is totally different than George. And he is
Oh,
more
incredible.
practical and not as, I wouldn't see him as like chasing spirituality as much, but like approaching it more philosophically and more grounded. So, like, he gets the spiritual aspect, but he was totally different energy, right?
That would
I
totally
can't
make
believe
sense.
this
Yeah,
right now. I
that's
just never thought
incredible.
about it as just kind of coming in that way. I never think about where the colors come from. Like this painting right here. Like I literally pick one color a day when I do the grid paintings, and it just is how I feel that day. But
That's
I'm like,
incredible.
maybe those are just the colors that are around.
No,
So,
I agree. This whole journey has just been like a huge validation for everything else in my life. So it's pretty incredible. I love that you're able to have that moment.
right?
That's incredible.
Yes, thank you for that.
And it could be coincidence, but it I don't think it is.
Right? Like, as you were
Yeah.
explaining the meanings of the different colors, I'm like sitting here thinking about these random people I've painted, and I'm like, well, he was a psychic, so it makes sense that that guy had like blue and purple.
Oh, that's incredible.
So, yeah, I love it. Now I'm gonna like be aware of it when I do it. I'm gonna be like, what? You're gonna like look up the color meanings before I paint them and be like, okay, I was feeling blue for this person, and this does make sense. I don't know.
Oh, that's totally cool.
I'm gonna put some thought into it now.
That sounds cool.
So, what are some ways that we can nourish our auras?
So literally just by taking care of your whole body,
Mm-hmm.
you can take care of your aura. Paying attention to your emotional and mental health, self-love and self-care, nurturing your passion, spirituality. The biggest one, unfortunately, though, that most people struggle with is eliminating toxic food, especially toxic people and
Mm,
behaviors. So, literally, just enforcing good boundaries energetically. That's going to be the biggest thing you can do to nourish your aura. We're all human, though, so
mm-hmm.
we can only do so much. But literally anything you would do to self care, and it feeds your soul. Limiting screen time. If you're not able to limit screen time, just using gemstones and organite to help shield your energy, helps protect your aura. Limiting caffeine, drinking plenty of water helps your aura. Also, though, if you're trying to attract a certain color, um, wearing that color or just bright colors in general can help your aura. Everything is a vibration, everything's a frequency. So if you want to attract a certain color, just start wearing that color as much as you can. But also, if you have a color that's super out of balance, um, maybe taking a step back from that color and wearing a
Mm.
complementary color to kind of balance it out for a little bit will also help balance your aura.
So for
Um,
like orange, the complementary color would be in the blues, right? So
Absolutely.
I have a lot of orange clothes. We were talking about
I
this.
know we were.
I actually don't have a lot of blue clothes, which is weird because I feel like there was a point in my life where I did wear blue, but for whatever reason, I just am all about orange. So if I'm like wanting to bring in like maybe the throat center, like, or the third eye, I would want to wear maybe blues
Yes.
that day
Blues and purples,
and purples.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So what about like tie-dye? Would that just like
Ooh, fun. That would be psychedelic. You might need to like do that on a yoga day or a day
right?
where you can exert some extra energy.
Right, pulling a lot.
But no, yeah, just throw a dart and see which one comes.
Right.
But no, color definitely influences our mood, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So tie dye sounds really fun.
Right.
I know for me, I tend to like be a blue, but I can be the flip sides of the blue. I can kind of dwell on things and let my anxiety run rampant.
Mm-hmm.
So, like right now, I'm trying to focus on growing a business. So, like wearing green
Mm.
because green is all about growth, or wearing some red would actually help. And I was going to wear red today, but I realized while I was getting ready that it was super noisy and I'm a
Right.
super fidgety person. So I didn't, I thought you guys would hear my jacket all day.
Right. It's
Uh,
it's a good observation.
yeah,
So
but so I need to wear more red to try to ground me a little bit more and also trying to bring in that powerhouse
right.
energy for like motivation and focus. Because like I'm the blue, so my whole closet's blue
Mm-hmm.
overall. So it's strange how we gravitate towards certain
Right. It's
colors.
like we're comfortable there. That's what we're
Yes.
used to. So here I am operating mostly from the sacral, okay, because of the human design. And I'm an artist and I'm a communicator. So, like, I'm literally, that is just the energy center for me that I'm most, like, confident with and comfortable with. So, but there are times where I wouldn't mind turning that down a little and maybe turning something else up, to attract a different energy, which I never really considered that, so I should have, but I've like learned a lot from this episode already. Just like
I've learned a lot from listening to your past episodes, so
yeah.
I love it. I just love how like all these little tidbits of information validate so many things that are already going on in our lives. It's just really
Right.
neat and fascinating
Right.
to see.
I love it.
Another big thing though too that to nourish your aura is nature.
Mm.
Either getting out in nature or bringing nature to you. Herbs are a huge thing
I
to
was just
nourish.
thinking, like, because you were
Yes,
saying, like, coffee isn't great, but I was thinking different herbs might project different colors based on what they're.
absolutely. Like, I don't know necessarily if they project certain colors, but if they did any, it would definitely be the green,
Mm-hmm.
to connect you to like the Mother Earth vibe.
Right.
But they just nourish your aura, your
So if you were
energy,
like
your well being.
leaking or so, like, because I've read and I have this book, Hands of Light, and I guess that's when I first started looking at like they have pictures of auras in ways that they can kind of leak out. So there was like almost like puncture wounds or something. So I feel like with the herbs, because they are healing, like they can heal those parts to where if you're not leaking out and like you're doing the self-love practices like you were saying and you're not leaking, then it's going to fill that aura with that beautiful color instead of just like, it's just sort of floating out of you instead of staying within or something like that maybe.
Absolutely, definitely. I'll have to get that book and read it. That sounds very
It's
fascinating.
yes, I'll take a picture and send it to you.
Okay,
It's really good. You'll love it. You'll love it.
thank you.
So, yeah, I have friends
Absolutely.
that have struggled or have recently became sober. And when they were first moving into it, I noticed that they would be so bright when they finally gave up the alcohol or whatever. And like I would show them this picture in this book, and like the aura was like mucusy or whatever. Like it would be like a person on cocaine versus a person that's taking care of themselves. And like you could literally see this gross, like slimy colors.
Oh, wow.
And just seeing my friend go from being, dependent on a substance versus taking that time to just love themselves and trust that they, can get by without that. And then they just shine. It's so
Wow.
obvious to me when someone is like drunk or something like that. It's like I don't see it, like we talked about, but I can feel it. And I don't know. It's just an interesting, like that book helped me understand like how the substances that we do can affect our aura so much. So I think about things and like Reiki. Would Reiki be a good thing to nourish the aura?
Absolutely. Yes. My friend Rachel from Roaming Mystics actually did a session on me, and that was one of the few times where like I could see the change like instantly and drastically. So she only did like a 15-minute session on me, but the day that I did it, I was set up at an aura event or about a physical event. And I don't know what was happening, but my energy was just not where it needed to be. And like I kind of just went to her and I was like, I'm not my best, and like I feel bad because people are going to be coming in, and I just want to go home and go back to sleep.
Right.
So she was like, all right, sit down, we're doing some Reiki on you. And it literally just changed night and day difference.
Right.
Like I felt like a new person. It took like 1,000 pounds off my chest. And but yeah, absolutely, Reiki is great for changing your aura. Absolutely.
That's cool. Um, I saw on Instagram you had this video of someone, so you were like recording it, and someone was there and their aura was a certain color, and then someone else came and like put their hand on them. So that led me to want to ask the question is how does our aura affect and interact with other people's auras?
They literally overlap. And because we're walking around this bubble around us that's at least 2 to 3 feet out. So that we're always interacting with other people's energies and just auras unconsciously. Like it just happens without us even thinking about it. If you're not aware of your own energetic state, you could absorb other people's energy or like leak out onto other people as well too. So we kind of did that because I identify as an empath, and the blue definitely being dominant in my order validated that for me. My whole existence made so much more sense when I realized that like I identify as a blue
Right.
aura. So, and Rachel is an empath, intuitive, and I guess what describe as a medium. She's actually the one who initially is in the video sitting down,
Okay.
and I walk over to her and
Okay.
place my hand on her shoulder, and you can literally see. So you see her aura, and then you see our colors intermingle, and like our energies kind of like talk to each other, and then she takes on my aura.
Isn't that crazy?
It's incredible, but like you just don't realize that this happens on an unconscious level
Right.
all the time, especially for empathic people. So we have to be super careful to protect ourselves and shield ourselves. But it's just like why it's super important to eliminate or put boundaries in place with toxic people in your life,
Right.
because they're literally depleting your aura and your life energy.
Right. They're like energy vampires.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, we unconsciously, if we're not aware of it, we can take on those attributes ourselves because that's
Right.
the energy we're surrounded by. So that was one of the biggest, I guess, eye openers for me when I started to go down this rabbit hole of aura photography. It's just being more conscious of who I allow my energy to touch,
Right.
and be around, because whether you like it or not, like they're gonna touch your aura.
Right.
It's just part of life.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my friend. She's working with this girl and she's like, I really like her, but every time I work with her, I just feel so drained. And like, as you were saying that, I'm like, she's probably because she's needing her energy because my friend radiates. Okay. She is like the nicest, happiest person. So for her to tell me that she's leaving feeling depressed and, like just worn out after a shift when normally I feel like she's very extroverted. So normally when she's around people, she's like happier. Where like after I'm around people, I'm like, I need to go to sleep.
I totally understand
So
that
I
one.
don't recharge the same way. So I'm like thinking this person is just totally bringing her down. Is there like practices that you can, well, you said shielding, so I guess maybe crystals or
If for me personally, the shielding with gemstones is what works the most. But
okay.
just having a healthy energy practice along with everything else, like the self care, self love, a good yoga practice, a good like meditation. Because some people are just naturally more grounded, so they don't have to worry as much. Like my husband, like he's just he has no idea what he doesn't feel, I guess, other people's energies. So for him, like it, he doesn't have to worry about shielding as much.
Right.
But where like I'm the blue, I absolutely have to. So gemstones, obsidian has been the biggest one that helps me personally, but everybody's going to resonate with a different one. So I kind of had to go through a whole process of trial and error. So don't give up if you pick up like three or four and like you don't notice
Right.
anything initially. But so obsidian's a big one for me. Um, I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Carnelian. How do you
Carnelian.
Carnelian? That never used to resonate with me in the past, but in the last 3 or 4 months, I gravitate towards it. I'm wearing it today.
Mm.
So just find what works for you. But gemstones has been the biggest thing. I wear them in my bra because I
Yes.
keep them close to my heart because, you know, that's like your emotional energy is literally what people are draining from you. So
Right.
it makes a huge difference. So like someone like my husband will kind of say it's probably like a placebo effect, but it's like I don't care if it works, it works. Yeah,
Exactly. Totally get
yeah,
that. Yeah, I have a hard time not taking in people's energies. That's why, like, when I'm in the big group, like, I am so flustered. But I have this psychic spray that I use, and I'll spray it on before I go into like a concert or something where there's a lot of people, and it helps me so much. So I feel like doing something like that because that has the herbs, in it,
yes.
and I'm smelling it. But then adding something like obsidian, I mean, it's like I feel like there's magic there. So
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's I've experimented with Palo Santo spray,
okay.
and that's been incredible too for protecting my energy, and helping with my anxiety. So I do think sometimes my anxiety is triggered from the fact that I'm just feeling so drained.
Right. And you
Um,
have to maintain this certain energy when you're out. Like people expect something from
yes,
you.
yes.
That's where I get that same thing. Like, and I just want to like collapse when I get home because I'm like, I gave too much. I did too much. So I feel like that's my word today. Like, over in the present area, it's just from giving so much of my emotional energy to my children, and just with my son, his grandfather just passed away last night, and so there was this, like, it was so sad for me when I found out because I just knew how he was going to receive it. And then when, because I've lost my own father, like anytime someone I know loses their father, I get like so triggered. So, like, as soon as I found that out, I was like, this is going to totally show up in my picture.
And
So,
it did. It's there, but
yeah.
it's part of the human experience. And
Right.
I'm
We
so
can only
sorry.
shield so much. And then
Yes, you've got
sometimes
to
I feel
feel it.
like it's important. Yeah, it's important to feel it. Like, I was using that psychic spray I was telling you about, and I had this Akashic record reading, and the records were like, stop wearing that at the grocery
Yes.
store. They were like, because I was
Huh.
like using it to protect myself so much that I wasn't being seen. And I was like basically becoming invisible. And they were like, you need to share your energy with people. So, like, protect it, right? But also allow yourself to be seen too.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
That's an incredible view on it.
Right.
It,
Because I
it makes
wasn't
sense.
thinking about, like, I'm like holding it all in for myself. So it's important to share it, but also keep enough of it that I'm not just depleted. Because you can't pour from an empty cup, which is what we were talking about earlier. You just can't,
Absolutely.
you know?
That's it. That's interesting. I love that view on it.
Yeah. Um, What's the average like size and shape of the aura? Are they all kind of the same or?
Um, for the most part, they're, I guess, similar. On average, most people's auras are egg-shaped and it forms a bubble around your whole body. It's usually about arm's length in width, but it can go out further. Like really charismatic people can literally be feet.
Right.
So that's why like you can feel them. A lot of entertainers, their auras are probably massive.
That's interesting when my yoga teacher would talk about his yoga teacher would project his aura out. And so like everyone in the room would be like in his aura. And so they would be like directly working with him energetically. So that's an interesting thing I
That
hadn't
is really cool. I wish I had the energy to be able to do that with other people, but I just
Right.
I can't.
I have to conserve more.
Yeah, exactly. But I do have a friend that can project her aura, and I've definitely have fed off of it
Yeah.
for sure. But I just can't.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, everyone's
that's
different.
really cool.
Yeah. Um, do animals and plants and minerals also have auras? And do they interact with ours?
Absolutely. So all living things have auras. Um, Animals absolutely have auras, and it's said, like, especially our pets and animals in general can see our auras as well. So that's how they're interacting with us is our personal aura energy, and that's how they, I guess, choose who they like to be around and interact with as well. I can do dogs and cats auras.
Okay.
So it's really fun. I don't do a lot of them because they do require a certain sort of patience. And I am at events that are out in public, so it's hard to get a dog to focus to take a photo or a good photo that somebody would want to hang up on their fridge anyways.
Right.
But I can definitely get their energy at least and see what that is usually pretty quickly. It's just getting the perfect photo is the tricky part.
Right.
But yeah, every living thing has an aura. And that's just like part of the gemstones, how they help us shield and help us with our energetic needs. It's because we're interacting with them on that frequency, which is basically their aura. So it's really fascinating. I definitely want to learn more about it. But as far as like the dogs and cats, since I am able to take their aura, I would read theirs just the same as the human,
Right.
as far as the colors translate.
Okay. That's interesting. I wonder, like, my dog is a loner most of the time. Like, he's kind of does his own thing, but if I'm having, like, any kind of sadness, even if I'm not even, like, fully conscious of
He's
it yet,
blue.
he'll just come, like, sit right under my feet.
He's a blue aura for sure.
Right.
Yes.
But most of the time he gives me space. I guess he knows that maybe I just need alone time, but it's like I swear he can sense if I'm having a moment where I'm like, okay, I feel kind of alone, I'm having some anxiety, and he will come up. So I'm like,
Absolutely true. My first cat that I took an aura of was my Abby cat, and she passed this last summer, but she was exactly that way. She just knew when I needed that extra support, and then she would just be on top of me, and then like it was like the second, like I used to get a lot of migraines, and it would be like the second like I would start to feel back to normal, she'd be like, all right, we're done here. And it's like, I don't know how she knew, but she just knew and was there exactly when I needed her. So I bet he's definitely a blue aura.
Right.
Animals are incredible. It's exactly why like therapy animals really can help people. They're tapping into that energy, and it's pretty incredible that another like species can be so in tune with you and actually care so much to give their love unconditionally.
Right.
It's pretty incredible.
I'd be interested to see like when he's trying to comfort me and like helping me level out in color, which would be interesting if he was blue and I'm orange, so we would be complementary.
Oh, interesting.
So if his aura changes, like if I don't want to be like him taking on my sadness, or can he like transmute it or something, because he's not like thinking about it analytically. Obviously, it's like intuitive. So
I think it's more intuitive. He probably, I mean, he might, I guess some of your aura might bleed over onto him, but I think it's because we've been conditioned so much to, I guess, behave or react a certain way. Whereas animals, they just are like, they don't think about how they're
right,
going to react. They don't, I guess they're not thinking 10 steps ahead.
right. They're not like I'm depressed now that she's so
Right.
sad.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I don't think he's necessarily as affected by you
Okay,
as you think he might be.
that's interesting.
But I mean, I have seen pets though who basically mirror their owner's aura, which is really cool. So I had a couple get their aura and then they did their dog, and they were all pretty much the same. Like, I had to, like, I did tests of the equipment just to make sure that it wasn't like stuck or glitching out or something.
Right.
But their dog just was like, they were orange, red, and yellow, and their dog was the same. And it's like, well, you guys are like, and they're like, we go on adventures together. We're social. We're out in public. We're
Right.
like, and he was like, with the red, he's just super grounded, and because he's out in nature all the time. So it was
Right.
really cool to see. So I guess I'm not going to say a complete hard no that he
Right.
can't absorb your emotions, but overall, they don't.
It wouldn't like linger long if it was, because he's
Exactly.
not, and like he's like we are thinking about it more. Where dogs are
Right.
like, okay, that was, I can feel your sadness, and now I'm gonna go lay down and
Exactly. I'm gonna go lay under this tree and we'll all be good. Yeah.
right, exactly. So, have you ever had a reading with someone that surprised you or stood out from the rest?
It seems like every time I go out in the wild, I have a couple that, pop up on my radar that like just kind of surprise me or really just, I guess in a way, sometimes the most surprising ones are just the ones that really resonate the most with me and just validate like everything I'm learning or feeling myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that really stand out there are like one of the ones that you were talking about earlier with the video. We labeled it when we put it on social media, what being an empath looks like in living color. And it was just so incredible for me because it validated so much about my whole human experience. Um, so I think I told you a little bit earlier
Mm-hmm.
that my friend Rachel was the one with her hand on the sensor, and I placed my hand on her shoulder, and she took on my aura. And that to me was just like it just solidified, I guess, like this journey that I'm on. And it just really validated a lot about, I know I say that a lot, but it just really validated a lot about how I've interact with the world around me, and that I need to be conscious of who's around me so I
Right.
don't absorb that energy. And if I am like out in public or just need to be like mindful, like when I go home, I need to make sure I do some kind of energy routine so that I'm
Right.
not carrying that energy with me, especially when I go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is one of my favorite encounters so far with this equipment, because it, it's just proof to me that, and that we can show it to the world.
Right.
Like, this is what it feels like to absorb everybody's emotions. I guess my other favorite encounter, though, is with Monica from Roaming Mystics. Um, she wears a ton of jewelry, like gemstone protective jewelry, and I mean a ton. Like, she's always got on 4 or 5 necklaces, at least minimum, earrings, and her arms are just completely lined with bracelets.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we did one day where I took her reading with all that stuff on, and it was yellow and greens, which is a cool aura because it, like, the placements of it, it was very social. She was very like business minded, focused, and goal oriented,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to like call in growth. And so it was a really cool aura. But then immediately it's like, all right, take off all your gemstones. And
Mm-hmm.
then she was like, she put her hand on the sensor, and I remember her distinctly saying like, I feel completely naked. And her aura changed night and day. So her aura went from being yellows and greens to being almost all purple with a little bit of
Ah.
blue. So the blue is very empathic, and that's why she wears
Mm.
all those gemstones as protection, so she's not
Right.
absorbing everybody's energy, and so she can focus and call those things in. Um, but it was just really drastic. So yeah, the blue and the placement of it was just empathic and um, like connective, really emotionally and sensitive. And then the purple, her personality does tend to be a little flighty. Sorry, Monica. And a little, but the purples are, they tend to be flighty and daydreamy because
Right.
they're off in the ether somewhere. They're not concerned with what's going on here on Earth or in their human body. Like
Right.
they're off in the universe daydreaming about something.
Mm-hmm.
So she wears all those gemstones to really just help her focus and be present in the
Right.
real world. And that to me was one of my favorite because it was literally like she just stripped off all her jewelry. So it's seconds later to be so different. I mean, all of our auras are fluid, and to some extent, like I see different colors popping up, and I just kind of go with my intuition sometimes of what the aura color, like what I try to capture
Mm-hmm.
for those person, or the person in front of me at that moment. But hers was with the gemstones on was a solid yellow and green, and then with the gemstones off, it was just purple and blue, and like there was no question and no denying it. So that one is still one of my most favorite
Right.
experiences because it's just how everything overlaps
Mm-hmm.
the world around us. So it's like, yeah, we're learning about the aura and they're learning about this snapshot in time, but then it's still interacting with the environment around them, and that's always changing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just incredible to me.
Right. And it just really shows that like the crystal holes are affecting us. Even if it's
Absolutely.
subtle, it is affecting us on
It
some level.
definitely, and just pay attention to your environment because it does matter. It matters to your soul and your mind and your body, and it it truly matters.
Right. And that leads me to my last question, which we have addressed, but why is learning about our auras so important? What's the big takeaway here?
Again, it's just all about validation. For me, it validated a lot of things that I already knew about myself. So just from my own life experiences and also through like therapy, it also put into focus what I really needed to continue to work on.
Mm.
My anxiety and my self doubt is consistently and heavily present, especially in my first aura photos. So now, almost a year later, I can see my aura becoming more balanced um, because the colors are still very similar, but I'm losing, the muddiness and the murkiness.
Mm.
So the work, it helps to see when you're working on something, it really helps to see your progress. Um, for the general public, though, just anybody knowing what your energy looks like, it can help you take responsibility of your own energetic hygiene. So
Mm.
it's a tool that can help you live more consciously. Um, but also, like if you know your families or your partners or even your children's auras, it can help you interact with them on a more conscious level too. Because we all have our own emotional language, and the ways that we are like default and programmed to communicate is different. So like my needs to feel safe and heard are completely different than like a yellow or a green dominant aura. They communicate very differently. Like I need more time to communicate, and then like my husband or my brother, like they can react a lot more quickly. So it's just like if you know other people's auras, you can kind of give them space to be themselves, and you can find a middle ground easier to interact and just like all live a happy daily life. Um, it can also mean though too, like when you are going through hard times, you know how to be there for that person. Either to give them space or, like just give them an extra hug and like, you're doing great, you got it. Our aura is like we all interact differently. We all need different things. If you're more dominant in color. So knowing what your aura colors are can help you harness that energy. It can really help you support and work with it as well, though, too. But really the biggest thing for me is just energy hygiene. Being able to just be conscious of that and make sure that like you're not spilling out onto other people, making sure your needs are met, and just finding balance would be the biggest thing why people should be conscious of their aura.
Right. I love that. I love that answer. So we're about to wrap up. What's the best way for our listeners to contact you and follow you on social media? And could you share the next couple events that you'll be at?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the social media. The social media is definitely the best way to find out about where I'm at out in the community, what events I have going on. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram, both at the username of @PurpleSageAuraPhotography. If you do have a specific question, email is the best way to reach out to me. And that is amanda@purplesagephotography.net. So I also have a website that I'm working on. It has an updated calendar of events and my newly started blog. You can sign up to receive newsletters once a month, and those will start to debut in February sometime. My website, unfortunately, currently doesn't have a lot of information about aura photography, just except for all the events that I have scheduled. But that will soon change. I'll update it with more information on aura centric. Right now, it's all about my nature photography.
Okay.
So probably the next place that you can find me out in the wild will be the Hummingbird Cafe on February 12th. I'll be there from 12 to 5 p.m. And that's going to be just a general market. So come check out all of the vendors there. And then the next opportunity in February will be at the Mystic Orb in Clinton, and I'll be there 12:30 to 5. And they're a cute little metaphysical shop. So if you haven't been down there, please come check them out. And I look forward to seeing everybody.
All right. That sounds awesome. Well, thank you for coming out and being on the show with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I was so nervous, but I really appreciate this platform that you have here. And I enjoy listening to every episode.
Thank you so much for listening. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.